So let's get to the meat of the topic that I'm curious about, because we don't get to talk to a lot of founders who have their companies acquired. How did the acquisition of Blokur come about?
Well, I think the first thing to understand if you're an entrepreneur is that when you take money from an investor, you're making a deal with them about what's going to happen in the future. And if you have a certain type of investor, part of that deal is the company's going to be sold one day. So Blocker had, a venture capital fund as an investor, and I knew one day this company is going to be sold. So it starts as soon as you take the money. That's one thing. Then there was a period of a lot of volatility in startup funding, and you're always asking yourself, should I be raising more money and grow the company to be bigger, or should I now take the chips off the table and sell the company? And it's always about the decision between those two things. And as we got closer to the sort of expected deadline of how many years the investors have been in, at the same time the pros for selling now started to increase more than the try and raise money now, based on the expected future of the company. Then there's the actual selling of the company. People often say companies are bought, not sold, meaning you can't just decide one day I'm going to sell it and expect to ring up a few people and sell it. I think that's only partly true, because that is kind of what I did. But the reason it's partly true is that everyone I spoke to was somebody I already knew. So for years, you speak to the companies that are bigger than yours, the people who are investors in the companies that are bigger than yours. You build all these relationships. And in the end, of the sort of five or so companies that made a bid to buy Blocker, I knew all of these people personally. So it's a very sort of long game from starting with the investment, meeting all these people, and then the timing and the moment comes, but you have to be ready for the timing for it to happen. Um, and then
I guess the second part of the question would be, so why then?
I just think that we reached a point in the life of the company where we weren't going to become the next Google or Facebook. And so you're not going to have somebody invest tens of millions of dollars in you trying to become the next Facebook or Google. That business case and actually that's one of the things you can discuss, but that doesn't happen very often in music. And we reached the point where the company's doing well, but it's not going to do that. So then you're looking for alternatives. There was a crash in the, as mentioned before, there was a crash in the funding market for startups at the same time. And then there was a period of consolidation, which we took up as an opportunity, where suddenly all the companies that were involved in rights and things connected to rights were looking at, oh, if these two companies were together, that would make something really good. And then either if you're one of those two people, that's good for you, or it's scary if you're the competitor. And it started to drive all of this kind of FOMO of like, oh, who's buying who and what's going on. And so I think that's probably in the end the trigger why the company was bought, was that dynamic of the competitive dynamic, and lots of people trying to buy a solution for rights, and Blocker was the only one that you could buy. That's probably it. But from the investor's perspective, it's also about the decision, like, is it better to carry on and try and become a massive company, or is it better to sell now?
Was that like the moment when companies like Fuga and Audio Salad were getting acquired? Is that what you're talking about, where you see all this consolidation, or am I thinking of the wrong set of companies?
It could be. It's probably lots of things that are not public. There were discussions of things that were going to happen and didn't happen. But every time I spoke to a CEO of a company in our world, they would say, oh yeah, we would try to make an offer for this and we didn't see it. Or did you hear they made an offer for that? And did they make, it just, like, everyone was talking about it.
Hmm. What was the process like of having your company acquired? What happens once somebody expresses interest, and yeah, how does that go for you as the founder and for the company?
In terms of the pure process, going through basically different stages of interest and diligence in your company. So in the start, you speak to somebody and they say, oh, I might be interested at this kind of price. And, already then you're going, well, that's much too low a price, obviously, but, let's carry on talking. And then they'll say, well, okay, maybe you can prove me wrong. Can I see a presentation or something? So then you'll present the business at a high level, and that may lead to then a formal offer. After that, though, you're going to then have really intense diligence of all of your contracts, of all of your data, of all of your customers, of all of that kind of thing. And at the same time, you're negotiating a complex set of legal agreements. What I found was that it was really just a problem solving. It was just a stream of problems to be solved, which were things you often didn't know much about. Things like, American tax law, or we had a shareholder that had a heart problem and couldn't be reached because he was in the hospital. We had to change the company's constitution to get vote through. You just like constantly solving all kinds of weird problems, and it's a combination of that technical aspect, of the people aspect of working with the management team and maybe the investors and the board of the company, and the personal aspect. Behind you, you've got all of your shareholders and you've got your team, and you have to think very carefully about what to communicate to them. So it's really a kind of a complicated problem solving and communications challenge.